from the start. Okay. So like I said, we're looking at CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, including REBT. So REBT in particular, I'm focusing on because it's something that's used a lot in sport. So I'll be talking about some of the research and some of the approaches that are used with REBT in sport. And some of you might find this interesting. Hopefully you'll find the research interesting as well. So let's have a look here. So our aim is to consider CBT including REBT, and we're going to consider the evidence for these working, and then you can consider how you can use these approaches in education, in work, and in your life. Okay, so one of the founders of REBT, which is Rational, Emotive and Behavioral Therapy, was developed by Albert Ellis. And it's been developed more and more since then with Albert Ellis and a lady called Wendy Dryden, and more researchers have been adding to it. So again, it's called Rational, Emotive and Behavioral Therapy. So it deals with the ABCs. The ABCs, when we think about REBT, lots of letters, are the antecedents, the beliefs, and the consequences. The antecedents are what caused the situation. Okay, the beliefs are what are the limiting beliefs, and the consequences are what happened as a result of this. Okay, so later on, we're going to be looking at examples of these antecedents, beliefs, and consequences. So it's used with a lot of success with athletes, but also in occupational areas and different areas like that. So when people are experiencing emotional distress, it gives them a chance to look at their thought process. Okay, so an antecedent could be something like, I failed my exam, for example. The limiting belief will be like, this is terrible, this is awful, I fail everything, I'm going to fail the course, for example. And if the thought process is constantly like this, it can lead to a lot of stress, sleepless nights, and maybe even lead to not being able to study and to do other exams and things like that. So if the thought process is like that, the consequence isn't so good. So ideally what we do is we challenge this irrational belief and try to come up with something which is more helpful. For example, if you had a limiting belief such as, I'm a failure, I fail everything, what would be a more helpful belief, more helpful, rational belief? Could anybody think of one? So if somebody, your friend, for example, says to you, I'm a failure, I always fail, is there a more helpful belief or a thought that they could think, for example? You can unmute if you can think of something. So for example, for that one, maybe a more rational belief could be something like, it's not completely true, I just failed this exam and I can repeat and do better the next time, for example. So that's a brief look, but we'll continue on and just see what we can gather as we go. Okay, so we have a lot of evidence of REBT working. It can improve emotional disturbance in cases of criminal offending. So in this piece of research, there were 12 studies used. And it's important to note that while it improved emotional disturbance, it wasn't very clear if it could reduce reoffending. Okay, so that's one example of where it's been used. It's also been shown to be effective in reducing occupational stress and dealing with irrational beliefs with coaches in workplace scenarios. So in this study here, there were 108 coaches in an occupational scenario, and they were dealing with electronics. So these 108 coaches had reduced occupational stress, and they, even 3 months in a 3-month follow-up, they continued to have reduced occupational stress. And this was because the irrational beliefs were challenged. So it was also done in a group scenario. So it's likely that the group scenario and the support of the group scenario helped those coaches to have more rational and more healthful beliefs. And like I said, it's used frequently in sports, and there's a growing body of research on this. So Martin Turner is one of the researchers that I'll talk about a lot today, and there's a number of papers at the end of this PowerPoint that you'll see. So you might be interested in reading some of those and thinking about how you could use these. So have you any questions so far?
Remember, ladies and gentlemen, you shall feel free to ask Ms. Hassett any question about the topic she's addressing for you. Just feel free if you want to make a quick comment. If you want to ask a question, any item of her presentation that doesn't look very clear to you, go ahead, please, and feel free to ask questions. The floor is yours as well. One thing that I would like to ask you, Ms. Hassett, if you don't mind, as we don't have any question as of yet from our participants, is what about the input of what I would call sociological factors, which means there are certain things that are considered inhibitors, depending on the way people are evolving, the activities they are trying to complete, and so forth and so on. And because of those circumstances around them, they feel sort of shy of, diving in and doing action, so to speak. So what is your take on that? What society forces people to either do or not to do?
Yeah. That's a really good question, I think. So I believe that it is more challenging for some people, but what the research shows is it comes down to desire as well. So desire to succeed. So some people, when they are faced with adversity, so real adversity, they develop more motivation to succeed. And for sure, things are more challenging for some people to succeed. And maybe because of certain challenges, people think, this is too difficult for me. It's too difficult. I can't do it. There's no way I can do it. What's the point? But it's also about thinking, what does that thought do to somebody? Does it make them feel more stressed? How stressed do they feel? Are they sleeping at night? And is that helpful? So it may be just about trying to reframe the thought and thinking, well, maybe somebody could help me with this. Is there something I could do? Is there somebody I could talk to? So, or is this thought helping me? That could even be a good way to start. So is this thought helping me? So, and it is right, there are sociological challenges that some people have. So yeah, it's an interesting question. Any more questions or comments?
Remember, dear participants, the session is yours. It's not made for just the building or the structure of Atlantic International University. It is for you. So it is on you, the burden of taking the most out of everything we're getting today from Ms. Barbara Hassett. So just feel free. If you don't want to speak, some people are not quite comfortable speaking. The chat line is also available. You can go in there and type in your question, which I will see, and I will find pleasure in reading the question for our presenter. So please, we are waiting for your input, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. Also, I got a message from somebody saying failure is part of our growth. And that's true. It is true that we can grow, and it's about the meaning that we create from the failure. So somebody who fails at something may decide, I failed, therefore I'm always going to fail. Whereas another person may create meaning from that. So it's about looking at the thoughts and going, I failed this time. So what will I do next time? What can I do next time? So yeah, that's a good point. Thank you for that. Okay, so we'll move on. So we're going to look at a systematic review of REBT, the use in sports. Okay, so for this systematic review, there was 39 studies examined after exclusion, and it was discovered that this REBT in sports tends to be used predominantly in Europe. At least the research studies tend to come predominantly from Europe, and it's mainly in male elite football to deal with anxiety. So suggestions for future research are to broaden the scope and include REBT to consider things like health and happiness, long-lasting careers overall in sports and well-being, and to diversify into other sports and other groups. And another aspect of this systematic review is that studies were often on a single case, and one of the measures was social validation. So it was clear that some athletes have a real need for social validation. So how am I seen in the public is something that can create a lot of pressure for them, and can also be a real motivator. So in the cases where social validation was considered a measure of effectiveness, it was that this wasn't as much pressure as before. So social validation can be, what will my coach think of me? What will my family think of me if I fail? What will the people in the community think of me if I fail? So REBT was able to reduce that pressure of social validation, creating huge amount of stress. Does everybody understand that aspect of social validation? Are there any athletes out here or any coaches, anybody who does that in their free time? I see one thumbs up here.
We have a hand up from Mojisola Esther. Go ahead, Esther, your comment, your question, please. Esther Mojisola.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I've been finding it difficult to mute.
That's okay.
Mute myself. Okay, so I just gave a validation to what Ms. Arek just said, not a question.
Okay, perfect. You agree. You understand social validation and how it works in athletic scenarios?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So we have Dr. Emmanuel Thomas. Do you have a question? I think you've got your hand up, maybe by accident.
Yes, I saw the hand from Dr. Emmanuel. Let's try to get him to unmute himself. Go ahead, Dr. Thomas.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Dr. Vaccine and Ms. Hasted. I joined a bit late. I just wanted to find out this abbreviation REBT. What does it stand for? I think I joined the session a bit late. Just want to find out.
That's no problem. So it's Rational Emotive Behavioral Therapy. So the reason for those names is because it looks at the rational and irrational beliefs. Okay, so it's a form of cognitive behavioral therapy. So we're going to look at it a little bit more in detail now. Okay, so we're going to move on a little bit to other sports contexts. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the IPBI scale. So this scale was developed, it's called the Irrational Performance Beliefs Inventory scale, and was developed by Turner et al. Well, the first piece of research on it was developed, and then the actual scale was developed by Martin Turner. And it's really, really useful. So the measurement scale, it looks at irrational beliefs in 4 different areas. So in demand, in awfulizing, in self-deprecating, and in low frustration tolerance. So how this works is there's a series of questions and there's a scale that we use to mark them off. Okay. So when we are looking at it, we may realize that somebody is being extremely demanding on themselves. So their beliefs and thoughts are very demanding. And as such, they're creating a lot of pressure. Or they could be awfulizing. So awfulizing is, it would be awful if I fail this. It would be awful if they thought I wasn't good. It would be awful if I didn't reach a first in this exam, for example. Self-deprecating is when people say things like, I'm just not good enough. I'm never any good at this. I'm no good at. So it's a self-confidence belief thought process. And then the last one, low frustration tolerance, is beliefs and thoughts that sound like this. I can't stand it when, for example, I can't stand it when he talks to me like this. I can't stand it when the players always cheer a certain way, for example. So examining those thoughts can help people to develop a different thought process. So we'll look at this scale briefly. So there's a number of questions on it. And do you have a question, Mojisola? I think you're muted.
Yes, I have a question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just thinking the IPBI, can it be used to, okay, so let me rephrase my question. What can this be used for in internal coaching or in coaching process?
Yeah, it was developed for performance. So it's used a lot in sports, but it can be used in any kind of performance. Okay, so this is a sample of some of the questions here, and there are a lot more questions. So they're in or around 30, and in this specific sport related questions. And what we do is we look at these questions and then we develop how much somebody is focused on demanding, or do they have low frustration tolerance, or are they self-deprecating, or are they awfulizing? Okay. So yeah, it can be used in any kind of performance settings. And even so it's related to well-being. So if people are struggling with mental health as well, this is generally where it stems from. So like, I can't stand not reaching my goals is related to low frustration tolerance. And if I face setbacks, it goes to show how stupid I am is related to self-deprecating. And I can't tolerate it when I fail at something that means a great deal to me. Again, that's low frustration tolerance, okay? I need my manager or coach to act respectfully towards me. Again, this is demanding, okay? So this thought would be challenged, okay? Demanding. I have to be viewed favorably by people that mattered to me. So this one here, I have to be viewed favorably by people that matter to me, is also demanding, okay? So
okay, so what is the, okay, so if it's demanding, if it's awfulish, if it's low tolerance level, these different levels, what do they, okay, so what do they say about the person?
So they don't
and
say,
if you have, and if you have somebody who is on a high score with demands, what sort of help would that person be needing?
Yeah. So you're moving on to the next part of the seminar. So
okay.
So it's really a good indication that gives us an awareness of where somebody is stuck, so why they're struggling. So then we can go, oh, okay, so they're struggling with low frustration tolerance, they're struggling with demanding, or they're struggling with self-deprecating. But it can be a combination of a few of them. Okay, so you can work with people who have it in all four of the areas, or it can be particularly high in one area, for example, low frustration tolerance. So you end up working with those, but I'll show you what it looks like here in just two examples. So earlier I talked about the ABC. So the ABC was the activating event. Okay, the B is the belief, so the irrational belief, and the C is the consequences. Okay, so here's an example of an activating event. Okay, so playing and captaining the international team. The adversity is I'm not performing consistently. Okay, so this person wants to perform consistently. Now, when they do the scale, it was discovered that they had more demand. So I want to succeed and play well all the time, and therefore I must. Okay. And low frustration tolerance, I can't stand it when I don't play well. All right, so you can imagine if somebody has these two thought processes happening predominantly all the time, it can create a lot of stress in the body. Imagine, therefore I must play well. I want to succeed and I must play well. Or I can't stand it when I don't play well. So imagine somebody going around carrying all of that in their body, and then they're not sleeping, they're struggling to play well. So the unhelpful consequences can be pre-competition anxiety. Behavioral consequences can be disrupted sleep, being confrontational and aggressive with teammates and match officials. So I'm sure some of you have watched sport and you've seen the levels of aggression that happens. And so often this is stress, overthinking performance pre-match, and increased heart rate. Okay. So now what would happen in a scenario when somebody is working with an athlete, for example, you use a number of different methods to try to challenge these beliefs, and the aim is to try to get them to come up with something more helpful. So the preference here will be, I want to succeed and play well all the time, and it's not the end of the world if I don't. So you want to get the athlete to that place where they can start to think, this is going to be more helpful. This is going to have better consequences. Okay, so the emotional consequences could be better pre-competitive health, better sleep, relating better to athletes, and focusing on the controllables, and reduced heart rate. And if for high frustration tolerance, the belief becomes not playing well can be hard to take, but I can stand it. And for the good of my career, it's worth standing, for example. So in an ideal scenario, the person working with the athlete brings them around to this way of believing and thinking. Do you have a question, Mojisola?
Before we go to back to Esther, I'm so sorry to jump in, Esther and Ms. Hassett. There is one question on the chat line. It's been around for quite a while, and that is from a participant named Victoria Velis de Guzman. And so far we are emphasizing responses that we could get from adults, from athletes, and some other people in some other walks of life. But the question from Victorina Velis de Guzman is, can that strategy, the REBT, be used in school settings? If yes, what is the age of students that could be required to apply the REBT with them in a school setting?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I use it with young, like children as well. It depends how well they can think about their thoughts. Okay, so some young people struggle to think about their thinking, and they don't know what they were thinking. Whereas other young people, they know well what they were thinking, and they can work out whether they are demanding on themselves, whether it's low frustration. So it depends on the young person. It's hard to do it as a whole group. It's better to do it in a one-on-one setting, for example, or a very, very small group. You could use the IPBI scale, for example, so you could use the irrational beliefs, but you would just need to be sure that the young people were supported if they had something that was quite hard to deal with. So yeah, it can be used for younger children, but as a whole group, it can be hard to. It can be, I suppose you can address it as a whole group, as a group of, like, say, for example, 30 young people. You could look at things like I must, I have to, I need to, and talk about what they do to the body. So you could say, if you keep saying this to yourself, what does it do to your body? And children are very good at imagining scenarios like that. So they'll automatically go act it out and go, oh, it's horrible. And then if you get them to think of the more positive thought and say that to themselves for example, then they realize, oh, that's nicer. I feel better, feel more relaxed. So that's a way that you could do it as a whole group, the whole group of students, and a kind of a simple way for them to realize, oh, actually, that thought might not be so helpful. That's one way. Does that answer your question, Victorina?
I want to respond on behalf of Victorina.
Yeah.
She is not speaking, but apparently she is pleased with the response that you have provided. As you know, some factors have to be taken into account in order to use the REBT as a therapy in a group format.
So we'll do an exercise a little bit later, Victorina, which you'll see similar to what I was talking about as well. It'll make sense for you. Okay, Mojisola, I'll go back to you. You're muted.
Okay, Mojisola, Esther, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I just want to ask that as to go along, please, can you just give some articles, books, sites where we can read up?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the end of this PowerPoint, I think you'll have this PowerPoint after class. I'll send it through, but also there's a reference list. So you'll be able to get access to articles and books and that, which you should be able to access through the university as well, which will outline this for you. So this book here is really useful, Rational Emotive Therapy in Sport and Exercise. And it's an interesting read as well.
Dr. Vasinsa, would we be able to get access to that document?
Number one, yes, every session that we do is recorded live, which means that recording will be available, and we provide students with the link in different formats. I mean, in different ways. It can be either through their student portals. They go to their portal within a day or two, and the link will be there. Another option is for that link to be sent directly to the students by email. And there also is the option of going to Facebook and type in Atlantic International University, and there you will see either this presentation from Ms. Hassett or previous live class sessions as well. So multiple options will be available for students to get these recordings of our live class sessions.
Okay, because on the student portal, yes, we get the recordings, but the real presentation, the document, I have never gotten it. I don't know whether others are getting it. I've never gotten it. But the recording, yes, I get that.
I'm so sorry to hear that, and I'm gonna convey this message to our technology department, and eventually they will do something more pragmatic to ensure that all participants, all students of the institution do receive the actual document that you are referring to. Additionally, Ms. Hassett has also mentioned that she will indeed make the document available to everybody. So either way we go, you're not gonna miss out at all.
Okay. So please, Ms. Hassett, after the class, please, you can drop it on the chat so that we can download it, we can have access to it immediately. That would be very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, I send it through a different site, but yeah, we can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, all right, so this is looking at another scenario. So this one we'll go through quite briefly, and this is from the same book. So we have situation A. This is from a person who's trying to lose weight and trying to develop good exercise habits. Okay, so they see a stunning woman. They think to themselves, this person looks much better than me. My partner would notice her. He would prefer her looks to me. They would reject me. Okay, so here they have lots of irrational beliefs. So you can see the demanding, I really don't want my boyfriend to ever like another woman. It would be awful if he found another woman attractive. It would be totally unbearable. It would prove how utterly disgusting and unlovable I am. Okay, so then you can imagine the consequences here. Lots of stress. Maybe they don't go to the gym. Maybe they lose interest in exercise. The preference may be, I really want my boyfriend to only have eyes for me, but unfortunately he doesn't have to. So this is an example of challenging these irrational beliefs and developing more rational ones here. Okay, so high frustration tolerance would be, although it would be tough to bear, I could bear it if he noticed someone else. And in the service of my desire to exercise more, it would be worth it for me to bear it. And then we have unconditional self-acceptance here, okay? So ideally, the helpful consequences are that somebody feels better and they feel more motivated as a result. Okay, so let's look at approaches and tools. So we talked about this briefly earlier. So as we were saying, we have the ABCs. We have activating events, beliefs, and consequences. So the thing to do is to challenge the thought, consider both sides, and consider what they do to your body. Okay. So as a group now, we're going to consider the thought, I can't stand not reaching my goals. Okay. So I want you to say that to yourself a number of times and just notice what it does to your body. Okay. So keep saying to yourself, I can't stand not reaching my goals. 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 Continuously. Okay. Does anybody notice what it does to your body? Yeah. What'd you say that?
I'm under pressure.
Yeah. You can feel the pressure. You can feel the pressure in your
Yeah.
heart. Yeah.
And so much, I'm very scary, very afraid.
Yeah, you can. So what we do is, can you think of a more helpful thought? Something that will be more encouraging, make you feel more relaxed and more encouraged, more motivated.
Yeah, so I can have something like, I will reach my goal surely, but okay, so I can have something like, reaching my goal is sure but steady. I will go at my own pace. I will go at my pace and I will get there.
Yeah.
I'm not in a rush. Nobody is my target. I'm my own target. And so I will go at my pace, steady but surely.
Yeah, I like it. Steady and surely. Very nice. That's an easy one to remember as well. Steady and surely. Very good. Okay. So as I was saying, REBT is a branch of cognitive behavioral therapy. So one of the pioneers of this is Aaron Beck of the Beck Institute. So you may be interested in looking this up online. The Beck Institute is quite famous and based in America. So he's quite a famous psychiatrist, and in cognitive behavioral therapy. So he started researching this back in the 1960s, and there's a number of cognitive distortions. So distortions are something that's not right, okay, which are generally recognized. And these have been developed over the years, and they're commonly used with therapists. And I know in Europe, there are specific cognitive behavioral therapists who just specialize in cognitive behavioral therapy as well. And we have a question from Ivy. Oh, you're muted.
I have unmuted your mic, Ivy. Give it a try again, please. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Avastin. And it's just a little bit of contribution or something. Yeah, one of the things, I believe that's one of the things that will help us not to feel like we are failing or whatever is not to compare ourselves with one another. Yeah, absolutely. Everybody has strength. So your strength is different from my strength. And therefore, if I want to follow what you are doing, I might not be able to do what you are doing because your strength is different from my strength. So we just have to be focused on what we are capable of and concentrate so that we can achieve our goals step by step. I believe that it will really help, and you even have you self-motivate yourself, because you have to be a self-motivator. If you sometimes people are also concentrating on whatever they are achieving, so they even ignore people and others. So you have to decide to motivate yourself, encouraging yourself maybe by the word of God, because sometimes you feel like this person is going faster than me, or this person is doing well than me. But I believe that motivating yourself and also focusing on and not comparing yourself with another person, because you don't know the kind of strength the person have, though you might not have it, but by and by you will achieve your goal. So you really have to be focused so that you not be distracted. Sometimes you look at somebody and you are distracted and you lose focus. So you really need to be focused so that you can achieve your personal goal. No, though there might be obstacles, hindrances, but focusing will help you reach your goal by all means. But as long as you are focusing. Thank you.
Thanks, Ivy. That's lovely. It's a really, really good point. And it's difficult, I think, in performance scenarios. I think people comparing can be useful because it gives you a good measure to go, oh, they're doing well, then maybe I could do well. But then if you use it in, and it's a sociological term, when people use it in the opposite way and it demotivates them, then that can be a problem. So when people get demotivated, they believe they are very far away from the goal and they believe that they can't achieve it. But when they're closer to it, they're less likely to compare themselves to others and to feel as demotivated by it. So there's a good book which talks about that. It's called Introduction to Social Psychology, and how people are demotivated when they believe they're far away from a goal. Yeah, but your input is very good. So trying to maintain focus, trying to stay grounded, and trying to stay on your own path and focus on your own strength is a good approach for sure. And so yeah, so we'll talk about some of these, and these will be similar to what you spoke about, Ivy. So let me just see. Yeah, we've got a couple of hands up. So Segmatso, I think I saw your hand for, I'm probably saying your name wrong. Segamatsu?
As a matter of fact, I just I just answered Sekomoto.
Yes,
Thali, now the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Thank you, Doc. I am in South Africa, so it's good afternoon where I am right now. Yes.
6 o'clock maybe.
Yeah, thank you, Ivy, for the words of encouragement. I have a slight challenge of not completing projects. The first one was I could not complete my first PhD, and I was almost done because I had done preliminary findings, and I had already presented my findings internationally, but I could not complete the course because I got caught up within the cycle. And then, you know, the regulations that you go beyond 5 years, then you have to start again. Anyway, then I started with Atlantic International University, and I completed it in 2021. But I have this fear now, you know, small projects, like maybe a building project, that if I start, I have this fear that when I start this project, I may not finish it. Like, because I've recently done the BLS, and also the estimated time, basic life support. Estimated time is 6 months. You know, I'm just left with one practical session for me to get the certificate as the instructor. But now, 6 months ended in April. So it's just another thing. So it affects me so much that I end up having this fear of starting a new project.
Yeah.
Because in between there are challenges that, you know, that pull me back. Because I'm a single parent, and you know, I would prioritize my children. I cannot compete with the children. Yes. So once I prioritize them, then it's a setback on my side. Yeah, that is my challenge.
Yeah. So what may be helpful there is to have like two things. So to have an accountability buddy. So to have somebody who you can talk to daily or weekly and say, I've done this, I've done that, I've done it. So you're making step-by-step goals, and then also to finish small tasks. So if you have a fear of not finishing things, if you can show yourself that you're able to finish small tasks daily, it builds up that confidence in being able to finish tasks, longer tasks. So, and you also said that you completed your PhD in the end, didn't you?
Yes, I completed it.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you so
That's excellent.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
that's very good. It's a big achievement.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's see, Macbeer, and then we'll go into the different cognitive distortions after Macbeer.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the presentation. My question is, what is the mindset study of jealousy? You know, a human being, yeah, what the psychology name on jealousy portion.
Yeah. So that's a cognitive distortion. Okay. So there's a little bit of background noise there. So again, that's a cognitive distortion. So what I'd encourage you to do is, as we go through the list here, try to think of where jealousy would fit into in this list that we look at. Okay. So these are called cognitive distortions. So for example, if we look at the first one here, filtering. So filtering is ignoring the positive and focusing on the negative. Okay. So it could be something like, the weather is always bad here. But actually, no, maybe there's actually 30% of the time the weather is good. So some people may have a cognitive distortion that they focus on the negative all the time. So that's filtering. Polarized thinking is all or nothing thinking. Okay, it has to be this way or not at all. Okay, I'm going to give it 100% or nothing. Okay, that can put a lot of pressure on people. And sometimes people who have high perfectionistic tendencies do this. So 100% or nothing, but actually good enough can be good enough, you know? So it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It can be here. So I'm sure some of you identify with this trait of all or nothing. Then we have overgeneralizing. So one failure could mean complete failure of a whole subject, or sometimes people who fail at one part of life believe that they are a failure then, for example. So that's an example of overgeneralizing, but it's not true for, in that scenario. So those are three of them now. So I'm just going to move on to a couple more. So jumping to conclusions. So this is deciding something or someone, something about someone perhaps without evidence. Okay. It could be deciding something about a situation without evidence. Okay. So it could be, I know for certain that this situation is this way, or that person doesn't like me, or that person doesn't want to spend too much time with me. Okay. Or that they'll fail me, or that I won't get that job, or that, so it's jumping to conclusions can lead to a lot of stress for people. Catastrophizing is assuming the worst of situations. Okay. So just because one bad thing happened, that's it, everything's going to be bad. Okay. So that's catastrophizing. All right. For example, it could be that you woke up in the morning, you banged your toe, you walked into something, therefore the whole day is going to be bad. But no, not necessarily. It doesn't mean the whole day is going to be bad. Control. So people who have this cognitive distortion may believe that everything happening outside of you is outside of your control, or it's completely controlled by you. So having this false belief that everything is outside your control or is completely controlled by you. Fairness. So fairness is assuming that everything should be fair, okay? But in life, we know that not everything is fair. And this can create a lot of stress for people as well. And then finally, we have blaming. So, or not finally. So blaming is not assuming responsibility, so always focusing on other people, but not thinking, oh, what did I do? What did I not do? And shoulds, believing that things should be a certain way. Okay, so that can create a lot of stress in the body and mind as well. But they should be this way, shouldn't be that way, that kind of thing. Emotional. So emotional distortions are, if I feel this way, it must be true. Okay, I feel bad, therefore this thing must be bad, or I feel a certain way. So these are some of the examples of cognitive distortions that people have and that need to be challenged. Okay, so are there any of those, Macbior, that you think would fit into the category of jealousy? So if somebody is feeling jealous, what cognitive distortion do you think you could use from this page or the previous page? The previous page was this one here. We had filtering, polarized thinking, overgeneralizing, and then we had this list here. Do you think any of those would fit into jealousy?
It's a filtering that can fall into. I can put the filtering.
Yeah. So what would the filter be if somebody was feeling really jealous of somebody?
So the filtering is ignoring the positive. No, I mean ignoring the negative thoughts and try to overgeneralize.
Yeah. Okay. Also, it could be looking at emotional as well. So, for example, if somebody is feeling really jealous, it could be they could over associate with that emotion. So if I feel jealous, then that person must be bad, for example. But actually, it may be just that emotion needs to be challenged. So can anybody think of ways to challenge these emotions? How would you, if you became aware that you had these kind of cognitive distortions, how would you deal with them? What can you think of in terms of ways to deal with them? Frank?
There have been some attempts by Prof. Yayok Paul to join us in during this session of questioning and answering. I have unmuted you, Prof. Yayok Paul, but you are nowhere to be heard or seen. I am so sorry about that. Let's go now to Frank Fury. Frank,
I am here. I'm listening to you.
Prof. Yayok? Yeah.
Yes, I'm listening to you.
Okay, go ahead, Prof. Yayok.
Yeah, I don't know, my timing here in Nigeria is evening. This is the first time I'm joining this lecture because I've been receiving the mails through a wrong email. And one of the challenges I have, my course of study is a post-PhD in project management. And I don't know whether I am part of this class or I have a different class because we've not really concluded on the courses I'm going to read.
Okay, so, I'm so sorry to hear your point, Prof. Yayok. Let me quickly jump in and address the issue that you are trying to share with us. When it comes to procedures, can you hear us, Prof. Yayok? Okay, I'm so sorry to have intervened at this point, ladies and gentlemen. The point is, if there are some questions about procedures and assignments at AIU, the class sessions are not necessarily intended for everybody. We're talking about sharing of knowledge in massive fashion, so to speak. So they are just opportunities for everybody to gain knowledge, to learn, regardless of whether that is your academic major or not. So that's the way I could respond to your point, Prof. Yayok. But if there are any elements of confusion on your end, please contact your advisor or your tutor or student services very directly. I hope you agree with us and you understand the response I just provided. Thank you very much for your understanding. Frank Fury, go ahead now, please.
Yeah, all right. Thank you. Yeah, so yeah, at first I was not getting the presentation, and because I just joined it in the midst of the presentation, but now at least I'm getting it. So the thing is, we're talking of jealousy, and how can we overcome that jealousy? So there was this other thing to say, filtering is also another way of dealing with jealousy. So filtering is like to ignore, ignoring the negative attitude towards your goal. Okay, so I would take that okay, I need to ignore the negative attitude towards my goal or decision. So I think that's the thing that I can take, or I would think it's important for me to progress or to reach my goal. Just ignoring the negative attitude towards those negative attitudes towards my goal.
Okay, yeah, that's one way to approach it. So if you notice that you have a negative attitude, and it can be helpful to write it down as well. So for example, one of the major things with thoughts is to build awareness of them. Okay, so you can build awareness through talking to a friend, it could be talking to a therapist, a coach, something like that. And even just writing them down and saying, oh, I notice I have this thought, okay? And try to think about the outcome. So if I keep thinking like that, what could the outcome be? Okay, so for example, if I have a thought that, there's no point, what's the point, for example? Well, we could look at the outcome. Okay, so if I keep thinking, what's the point in doing anything? Well, the outcome might be, well, I'm still going to be where I was in 2 years' time. So it's about looking at your thought, thinking about the consequences of that thought, and then thinking, well, what would be a more helpful thought? Okay, so I have some suggestions here. So for example, you could write down your thought process. You could then think, what would a more helpful thought be? Speak to other people about it, think about the outcomes, try to reframe it, and also breathe. And you can use things like distraction, you can go for a walk, all these little tricks that you use to try to get yourself to a more helpful, a more encouraging, a more motivating thought process. So does anybody have any questions about that, or any input about that? Has anyone tried this before? I can see a few hands up there. I'll try to, I think Christiana, I think your hand was up before and I missed you. Christiana Ngozi?
Your microphone is on right now, Christiana. You may feel free to ask your question now.
Okay, firstly, I want to say a big thank you for this course. Actually, this is my first time zooming in. It's a quad, knowledge is lost. Actually, I noticed you gave two. Am I held? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
There's a little bit of background noise, but I can hear you.
All right, no problem. I want to give very brief. Talking about CBT and REBT, they are both therapies, right?
Yeah, so REBT is a form of cognitive behavioral therapy. So these all look at Yeah, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Okay. Because you get to consider CBT and then REBT.
Yeah, so REBT
I want to know the difference between both.
Yeah. So REBT is a branch of CBT, which has its own own body of research, its own training. It's quite specific. So it deals with it deals with rational and irrational beliefs. So it really focuses on irrational beliefs. But then cognitive behavioral therapy is like the umbrella. So it's the umbrella that is over all of this type of research. Okay. But REBT in particular has a specific body of research on it because it just focuses on the beliefs, for example.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so
it's a
much.
good question. Yeah, good question. So I'm just going to show you the reference list here because I know that some of you are definitely interested in this. So you can find the IPBI scale, the measurement scale, in this book here. So in the book, I'll just show you. Let me see, 2019, 2016. Okay, so this one here is the development of the IPBI scale. And yeah, so then you also have the IPBI scale in another paper as well. And the two examples I gave you of the beliefs and the consequences are from this book, Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy in Sport and Exercise. So I'm sure through the university you'll be able to access them. And then the other studies here, these are interesting as well. So this is an interesting one on REBT in occupational stress. So there was 108 instructors used in that piece of research. And it was proved effective as well. So that one I think is an interesting read. There's not too much there as well. So we are almost at our time. I'll just take one more question if anyone would like to ask. Jeanette.
In that case, yes, we're going to Jeanette Yolande, Pamela, for that last question to our presenter, Janet.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning, or good afternoon.
Yes, I'm from Grenada. I came in a little bit late because I was using the link from yesterday and I was in the waiting room, however I got on. Just want to address something based on the REBT. I'm not sure if that was dealt with earlier, but fear and anger being part of emotions. Where do we you
said it too. Coach, now for you, Seth. When you said that, this is what happened. I'm even in the class. What happened with that?
There's somebody unmuted. So dealing with fear and anger. So dealing with fear and anger is we would look. Sorry, there's a lot of noise there. I'll just see if I can mute it. Okay, so if we're dealing with fear and anger, we would look at the activating event. So it could be, what was the situation that caused the anger? Okay, and then you would look at the beliefs. Okay, so let's say, for example, that somebody crashed into you. So you may look at the beliefs around that shouldn't have happened. They're crazy. So then you may look at, is that demanding? Okay, so you may look at that belief of being demanding and, well, it would be nice if they didn't crash into me, but I understand that people make mistakes. Okay, so it doesn't mean that you immediately have to go from fear to happiness, but it's just that you're allowing yourself not to get stuck in this state of anger and fear continuously that leads to depression, that leads to anxiety, that leads to sleepless nights, that may lead to snapping at people, those kinds of things. Does that make sense?
All right, so with that last question that you allowed, Ms. Barbara Hassett, we can all express our feelings of gratitude and thankfulness to you. You've done presentation on a topic that's really very, very, very big, and you've done your very best to sort of compress the information within the time frame assigned to your presentation. We are very, very thankful to you, and we want to anticipate you will respond to future invitations that the institution will make to you to be with us again and present to our students. If you want to say the last concluding words, last ending remarks, and just go ahead, Ms. Hassett.
Yeah, no, it was lovely to be with you all here today, and thanks so much for your input and questions, everyone. So yeah, and I will be sending the presentation through a different platform, so you should be able to access it there anyway. Yeah, so I hope you got some value from this, and I hope to see you all again soon. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure, a real delight.
You're welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. And we can all together say thank you to Ms. Hassett.